Okay, so our new topic is all about the Anti-Money Laundering Act. So I hope you read this law because there are only 25 sections, the original law. But it has been amended several times already. So why do we have this law? The policy is to protect and preserve the integrity and confidentiality of bank accounts and ensure that the Philippines will not be. Okay, your classmate already has the adapter. So that the Philippines will not be a site for money launderers. So this kind of law is required by international conventions and as a requirement, nawa? And as a requirement for it's off. Okay. Why is it yellow? So mo good na ang projector. Okay. Right, so here's the legislative history of the Anti-Money Laundering Act or the AMLA. So the last amendment was back in 2017. So they have been amending this law, okay, in order to strengthen the law. It expanded the powers further of the Anti-Money Laundering Council as well as added several predicate offenses. They've also added covered institutions with these amendments to the law. So this took effect on October 17, 2001. So before its effectivity, deposits and investments made prior to that date, October 17, 2001, will not be covered by the AMLA. And the penal provisions will also not apply prior to the effectivity of the AMLA. So this was one of the issues decided in this early case kaning sa Republic versus Eugenio. Okay, one of the earlier cases decided pertaining to the AMLA. So let's take a look at this video, okay, to introduce you to the concept of money laundering. This is from TED. Oh. What's wrong with the projector? The wire?
Other than the moments on the before your class,
Marag mo shutdown lang siya galit. Why are there so many online students? I only know of 2. Are you officially enrolled as online students? Everyone here in the Zoom? So we're running into some technical issues here sa classroom. Right. So let's play.
One of the most notorious gangsters in history, Al Capone presided
sir.
over a vast.
Something's wrong now.
One of the most notorious gangsters in history, Al Capone presided over a vast and profitable empire of organized crime. But when he was finally put on trial, the most he could be convicted of was tax evasion. For nearly $100 million a year, that's 1.4 billion in today's currency, that Capone had earned from illegal gambling, bootlegging, brothels, and extortion would have served as evidence of his crimes. But the money was nowhere to be found. Capone and his associates had hidden it through investments in various businesses whose ultimate ownership couldn't be proven, like cash-only laundromats. In fact, those laundromats are part of the reason for the name of this activity, money laundering. Money laundering came to be the term for any process that cleans illegally obtained funds of their dirty criminal origins, allowing them to be used within the legal economy. But Capone wasn't the first to launder money. In fact, this practice is about as old as money itself. Merchants hid their riches from tax collectors, and pirates sought to sell their bounty without drawing attention to how they got it. With the recent arrival of virtual currencies, offshore banking, the dark net, and global markets, schemes have become much more complex. Although modern money laundering methods vary greatly, most share 3 basic steps: placement, layering, and integration. Placement is where illegally obtained money is converted into assets that seem legitimate. That's often done by depositing funds into a bank account registered to an anonymous corporation or a professional middleman. This step is where criminals are often most vulnerable to detection, since they introduce massive wealth into the financial system seemingly out of nowhere. The second step, layering, involves using multiple transactions to further distance the funds from their origin. This can take the form of transfers between multiple accounts or the purchase of tradable property like expensive cars, artwork, and real estate. Casinos, where large sums of money change hands every second, are also popular venues for layering. A money launderer may have their gambling balance made available at a casino chain's locations in other countries or work with employees to rig games. The last step, integration, allows clean money to re-enter the mainstream economy and to benefit the original criminal. They might invest it into a legal business, claim payment by producing fake invoices, or even start a bogus charity, placing themselves on the board of directors with an exorbitant salary. Money laundering itself wasn't officially recognized as a federal crime in the United States until 1986. Before that point, the government needed to prosecute a related crime, like tax evasion. From 1986 on, they could confiscate wealth simply by demonstrating that concealment had occurred, which had a positive effect on prosecuting major criminal operations like drug traffickers. However, the legal shift has raised concerns involving privacy and government surveillance. Today, the United Nations, national governments, and various non-profits fight against money laundering, yet the practice continues to play a major role in global crime. And the most high-profile instances of money laundering have involved not just private individuals, but major financial institutions and government officials. No one knows for sure the total amount of money that's laundered on a yearly basis, but some organizations estimate it to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars.
Right, so hundreds of billions of dollars are laundered every year. Mga hatag ta sila 1 million lang, no? 1 million lang, no? So that's the whole purpose why we have this law, okay? To aid law enforcement in detecting, okay, money laundering acts and to apprehend offenders. So 3 stages. We have placement, layering, and integration. So how are these, what are the activities associated with the 3 stages? For placement, there can be smuggling of currencies, okay? And when a bank is complicit or lack, when they do not verify their customers and the source of their funds, so the dirty money can be deposited, as simple as opening a bank account. In currency exchanges, okay, when the dirty money is used to purchase securities through brokers. Okay, blending of funds. So commingling of the dirty funds, the dirty money with the clean money and asset purchases. So mag-shopping. And through layering, okay, the dirty money is further distanced from its source through layering methods. So the cash will be converted into instruments like stocks, bonds, and those assets purchased with the dirty money can be sold again and converted back to cash and vice versa. And in integration, okay, here, the laundered money is already well integrated into our economic system. It would be difficult to trace its source anymore. So in order to catch up with this very complex offense, okay, we have the Anti-Money Laundering Act. So the definition of money laundering itself seeks to capture all those persons who facilitate, okay, the laundering of money. So take a look at how this offense is committed. So it's committed by any person, okay, who knows that the money is tanawa unsa ka broad represents, involves, or relates. Okay, represents, involves, or relates to the proceeds of any unlawful activity. Okay, and that person will transact the money, will convert, transfer, dispose, move, acquire, possess, or use it, conceals or disguises, attempts or conspires. So this is one of the law which penalizes conspiracy or attempt to commit the laundering. Then anyone who aids, abets, assists in, or counsels the commission of money laundering offenses, and any person who performs or fails to perform any act which facilitates money laundering. So even through negligence, there can be prosecution of a person who was negligent, okay, and allowed or facilitated the commission of money laundering. Okay, another kind of money laundering is when the covered persons, who will know later who are these covered persons under the AMLA, okay, will fail to report the covered or suspicious transactions required to be reported under the AMLA. So under this law, there are two modes of committing money laundering. Okay, the money laundering proper, and then money laundering by non-reporting. So these terms, guys, these are thinking tools. When you are asked to define what is money laundering, you cannot answer it is money laundering proper. It is money laundering by non-reporting. So you can't phrase it like that. You have to properly give its elements. Okay, so it's important, okay, in the offense of money laundering that there must be knowledge, okay, that the monetary instrument or property are proceeds of unlawful activity. So monetary instrument, take a look, okay, it refers not just to money itself or cash, but any other instrument, okay, that can be a substitute for cash. And proceeds will be the amount derived or realized from an unlawful activity. So how do you establish knowledge that the monetary instruments are proceeds of an unlawful activity? So it can be established by direct or circumstantial evidence. So if there is, in fact, deliberate non-performance or non-compliance of any of the preventive measures prescribed by the Anti-Money Laundering Council or the AMLA, then that can be considered, okay, in determining the knowledge of the commission of the money laundering offenses. Unlawful activity. What are these unlawful activity from which the monetary instrument are derived? So there are several, guys, and these unlawful activities are what we call the predicate crimes or offenses. Because money laundering, guys, it becomes an offense because of the commission of this predicate crime. And there was profit gained from the commission of that predicate crime, and the profit from that, okay, has been is under the control, Mr. Aguanta. And the profit derived from that unlawful activity or predicate crime is being laundered through our economy. So when you prosecute money laundering, then both the offense of money laundering and the predicate crime can be separately prosecuted, right? And there is no double jeopardy which will attach to that. And for the purpose of prosecuting, in fact, money laundering, there is just this requirement of establishing probable cause of the unlawful activity. Okay, not just you do not need to wait for conviction. Okay, guilt beyond reasonable doubt for the commission of that predicate crime before you can prosecute for money laundering. So If there is a complaint filed for money laundering, you just need to establish probable cause that the unlawful activity or predicate crime has been committed. And there is also this prohibition against the filing of money laundering against candidates, okay, during the election period. So ask na ni siya nga question several times sa bar, guys. Kaning pwede ba makasuhan ang kandidato during election period? So no. For money laundering, it should not be filed during the election period if the respondent is a candidate. So what are these unlawful activities? Pagsugod, gamay ra ang dimension sa AMLA itself, the original AMLA. Later on, they've added several predicate crimes through later amendments. We have kidnapping for ransom, okay, several sections of RA 9165. Ano sa man 9165? Law student mo, yung ano mo mutubag? Comprehensive Anti-Dangerous Drugs Act. How about RA 1319? Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Then we have plunder under RA 7080, the anti-plunder law. And in the RPC, okay, robbery and extortion. Kato mga crimes against property and persons. Daghana. We have wetting and masyaw punished under PD 1602. This is the anti-illegal gambling na presidential decree. Piracy, qualified theft, swindling, and other forms of swindling in the RPC. Smuggling, violations of the Electronic Commerce Act, hijacking, destructive arson and murder, terrorism, and conspiracy to commit terrorism, financing of terrorism, and other punishable offenses sa kaning Terrorism Financing Prevention and Suppression Act, bribery and corruption of public officers, frauds and illegal exactions. So sa RPC gani, just think of those crimes falling within the chapter sa crimes against property, including crimes against persons katong sa robbery. Then we have forgeries and counterfeiting as well. We have malversation of public funds in the RPC. Human trafficking. Violations of the revised forestry code. And a lot more. So there are 34 predicate offenses. Kanishang last slide on the unlawful activities. These were additions made by the amendatory law. Violations of Philippine Fisheries Code, Philippine Mining Act, Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act, Anti-Carnapping Act, etc. I-include sad ang violations of the Securities Regulation Code. So, these offenses, guys, these offenses gi-enumerate as predicate crimes. Okay, when these are committed, it can actually generate money for criminals. Think about it. Kung you are a leader of a human trafficking ring, so you're selling slaves. Paparta jud ka. Kung nag-violate ka sa atoang Mining Act, so you are illegally mining protected resources. Kakortasag ka. Wildlife resources, manakop kag exotic or endangered, ibaligya nimo, kwarta na sad. So these offenses generate money for the criminals. So that's why it has been added as unlawful activities or predicate crimes. 2017 bar. So Flora, okay, was committed theft. This is the crime that she committed. But can she be prosecuted for money laundering? Because she stole that necklace. She appropriated it. And then she pawned the necklace for 2 million. And then she deposited it in her account. Can she be prosecuted for money laundering? Because, why no? Gi-check ninyo nga di siya predicate crime. Right, so no, okay? Answer to this is no. So that's why, yes, okay, if you do not find the predicate crimes falling within those AMLA itself, then you cannot prosecute for money laundering. So the predicate crime, the unlawful activity is you need to have probable cause, correct, to prosecute. So only those offenses considered as predicate offense. So therefore, guys, you need to know the predicate offenses para ka-answer mo. Okay. This is not just the bar question dealing with knowledge on the predicate offenses. The kansad ani na mga questions. Right? So remember the acts which constitute money laundering. So penalty for money laundering, imprisonment of 7 to 14 years. Okay, and a fine of not less than 3 million. So usa ni siya sa mga offenses na mahal kaayo ang fine na prescribe sa ato ang Congress. But not more than twice the value of the monetary instrument or property involved in the offense. So pwede kung 100 million ang worth, i-times 2 pag yun. And then, as long as dili siya mo exceed sa twice the value. So, kung 100 million ang monetary instrument, di 200 million, pwede mo impose og fine mo og 199 million. Nga napadyoy minimum, di siya pwede mo ubos og 3 million. How about money laundering by non-reporting? Okay, it is committed just by covered persons. Okay, covered persons under the law. When they knowingly do not report a covered or suspicious transaction as required under the law. So penalty for non-reporting, 6 months to 4 years, or a fine of not less than 100,000, but not more than 500,000. So covered persons or institutions are natural or juridical persons, and they have this obligation to report to the council a covered or suspicious transaction. So there are 8 categories of covered persons. I'm flashing here the text from the law. We have the entities regulated by the Bangko Sentral. So think of banks, non-banks, quasi-banks, trust entities, pawn shops, basta all entities regulated by the BSP, they fall under the first category. Second category are those companies regulated by the Insurance Commission. So all insurance companies, pre-need, etc. Third category are those entities regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So daghan kanya sila. Those who manage mutual funds, okay, those who deal in securities and other financial derivatives. Fourth category are jewelry dealers in precious metals. Okay, when they have transactions in excess of 1 million. We have jewelry dealers in precious stones. And they also have this threshold when they have transactions in excess of 1 million. So the law defines what are precious metals and precious stones. Sixth category are those who provide companies the following services. Okay, they act as formation agent. So they assist in the formation of corporations. Okay, when they offer services like they provide you directors or corporate secretaries of your company or partners for a partnership, when they provide the office or business address or any other accommodation related to the formation of a company. And when they act as nominees, as nominee shareholders for another person. So that's the sixth category. Because what's the logic why they are covered persons or institutions? Because money launderers will use corporations, dummy corporations, wherein that dummy corporation will hold the dirty money as part of their capital. Seventh category are these persons who provide the following services when they manage client money securities. So mga financial managers. When they manage bank savings or securities accounts, when they organize contributions for the creation, operation, or management of companies. So any person who can act as managers of those persons who come into money of others. Muna siya, that's what you think of with respect to this seventh category. And eighth category are the casinos. And this includes internet and ship-based casinos. So, gidefine sa katong recent amendatory law ang internet-based and ship-based casinos as well as casino cash transactions. Take a look, walay amount. So, but gi-monitor ang tanang casino cash transactions. So, here's a good way to memorize, strategy to memorize the covered persons or institutions. So, number 4 to number 8, they are designated non-financial businesses and operations, but by reason of their coming into large amounts of money in the course of their business, that's why they are considered as covered persons. So duties of covered persons will be customer identification, record keeping, and reporting. So in order to comply with their duty of proper customer identification, they need to have a record on the true identity of their clients based on official documents and a way to verify the true identity of their clients. Especially corporate clients nila. They should have ability to identify the legal existence and organizational structure and the authority and identity of persons acting on behalf of that corporation. So the AMLA prohibits the creation of anonymous accounts, accounts under fictitious names, and numbered accounts are only allowed for non-checking numbered accounts. Non-checking. Record keeping. So all covered persons must maintain a record of their transactions for 5 years from the date of the transaction. If there are closed accounts already, then the records on the customer or the owner of the account and other related records must still be preserved for at least 5 years from the date of closure. On reporting, they must report covered transactions within 5 working days from its occurrence. Exception will be when the council will prescribe a longer period but not to exceed 15 working days. So 5 days from covered transaction, they must report it to the council. So there is this prohibition that if there is a need, when they make a reporting of the covered transactions, they are prohibited from informing for the owner of the account that will be reported, and neither can they publicize that they are making a report. Walagi nang tanan ninyo kung ang mga lawyers covered persons ba? Because lawyers also handle large amounts of money or property for their clients. In fact, lawyers give advice as well on how to create or establish or form corporations. So the AMLA here excludes lawyers and accountants acting as independent legal professionals in relation to information concerning their clients or where disclosure of information would compromise the attorney-client privilege. So this is not a wholesale exemption, guys, for lawyers and accountants. So it is only to the extent that it would violate the attorney-client privilege. But in your ethics, you'll learn later that despite the attorney-client privilege, there are certain matters that must be reported by the lawyer. Like for example, imuhang client kay career criminal, sort of a mafia. Mafia siya sa Cebu. And then your client will ask you, okay, attorney, kung saan ako pagpatay sa akong asawa, nga dili ko madakpan. Okay, so how will you handle that? Attorney, na ako gi-hire na gunman. Iyahang i-ambush akong asawa gikan sa parlor. Is that covered by the attorney-client privilege, guys? No, so future crime. Okay, it's not covered by the attorney-client privilege. But if the crime has already been committed and they are consulting you in order to have you defend them in cases that will be filed against them, or in a case already filed against them, then applicable ang attorney-client privilege. But wa pa ni give up noon ang balaod sa mga lawyers and accountants because we are not precluded from submitting reports. But as it is worded right now, it is voluntary. Okay? Asa kita abogado mag-reporting ani. Voluntary? Lisod man kay submit sa report sa notaryo? Kani pa kaha? Monthly reporting sa notarial acts. Transaction. This refers to any act establishing any right or obligation, giving rise to any contractual or legal relationship between the parties thereto. So for purposes of the AMLA, transaction which involves movement of funds by any means. So transactions like this, which involves movement of funds, they are classified as either a covered or a suspicious transaction. Covered transactions will be based on the amount prescribed by the law, while suspicious transactions are based on the circumstances described in the law. What are these covered transactions? If in cash or other monetary equivalent, any amount in excess of 500,000 within one banking day. A transaction involving jewelry dealers, dealers in precious metals or stones, in cash, or other equivalent instrument exceeding 1 million. So kung bato or kung ginto, exceeding 1 million. But kung cash lang or cash substitute, exceeding 500,000. For casinos, a single casino transaction involving an amount in excess of 5 million or its equivalent in any other currency. That's according to the 2018 IRR. How about suspicious transactions? So, sayon na to memorization ang covered. Tulo raman to kabuok, di ba? Ang kani, mo dedicate to mo brain cells. So, suspicious transactions. What makes them suspicious? Okay, if there is no underlying legal or trade obligation, purpose, or economic justification. Sumibunga lang ka every other day na mag-deposit o 400,000 sa ilang account after being dormant for so long ilang account. Yeah, palit lang siya kayong nana. The client is not properly identified. Okay, the amount involved is not commensurate with the business or financial capacity of the client. And taking into account all known circumstances, okay, it may be perceived that the client's transaction is structured in order to avoid being the subject of reporting requirements. So anything, okay, that will deviate from the profile of the client and the client's past transactions. So napay catch-all provision. Any transaction that is similar or analogous to any of the foregoing. So if you are a prosecutor, okay, this will be helpful to you because there's a catch-all provision. Similar or analogous situations. So these covered and suspicious transactions must be reported within 5 working days. And if a transaction can both be covered and suspicious, then the law requires that it be reported as a suspicious transaction. Because once tagged as a suspicious transaction, mas tag doon siya sa council. May suspicious gani. So covered persons are exempted from the bank secrecy laws when they make the reporting, right, to the council. Right, so 2015 bar, you are asked, what is this covered transaction report and suspicious transaction report? Right, and there is this safe harbor provision, also already asked in the bar. What is the safe harbor provision? So safe harbor provision is that you will not be liable, okay, for any administrative, criminal, or civil proceeding if you made a covered transaction or suspicious transaction report in the regular performance of your duties and in good faith, regardless of whether or not the reporting results in any criminal prosecution in the AMLA. Okay, and lawyers and accountants will not be liable, okay, for violating the reporting requirement because we are not required to report it if the information was obtained through legal professional privilege. So other punishable acts in the AMLA, if there is malicious reporting, breach of confidentiality, and you knowingly participated in money laundering. So what's this malicious reporting? Kung nagpatakasad ka og report. So that's why there is the safe harbor provision because there is also this malicious reporting. Any person who with malice or in bad faith reports or files a completely unwarranted or false information relative to money laundering transaction against any person. Also punished under the same section is any public official or employee who is subpoenaed to testify but refuses to testify and purposely fails to testify. Breach of confidentiality. Katong gi-publicize ang reporting. Okay? Knowingly participating in money laundering, this is a crime that can be committed by covered persons and their directors, officers, or personnel. So naa sila additional na, naa sila mas bugat na penalty. Tanawa, fine corresponding to not more than 200% of the value of the money or thing laundered. And there are also administrative sanctions imposed on covered persons and institutions. Bukat sad siya. 500,000 per violation. Yeah, there is this non-discrimination policy. Kanang mga bangko ba? Mga tellers nga patakag profiling. Tungod kay mura kag naong o terorista. Diba? Yeah, usually ang ato ang i-profiling ana kay ang ato biyang mga Muslim brothers and sisters or kanang mga Turko kay naong daghan kay balbas. So there's this provision, guys. Especially kaning in addition to that, mag-racial profiling ka, ni assume nimo nga terorista or kanang yagit kay gisulob sa bangko pero mag-deposit og 1 million. Wa siya kabaw nga tag-iya day og dako kay nga tindahan sa merkado. So there's this non-discrimination provision and di kuno dapat mo discriminate against certain customer types such as already asked na sa ni sa gabar, guys, politically exposed persons. Who are these politically exposed persons? So possible na members or relatives of a politician, a well-known politician, or a public figure. So it will be considered as discrimination if, for example, i-report ang ilang transactions as suspicious and it is because of their religion, race, or ethnic origin or other attribute or profiles. So, mura na ang basis nga no, gi-report ilang transactions. So, those who can commit this are covered persons. So, who has jurisdiction over money laundering cases? We have the RTC and the Sandigan Bayan. So, the body which implements the AMLA is the Anti-Money Laundering Council. So chairman is the governor of the BSP. And it has two other members, the commissioner of the Insurance Commission and the chairman of the SEC. So kani silang tulo, they must act unanimously, okay, when they discharge their functions. And they act as well through the secretariat of the AMLC. So very powerful ning si council. This is where the reports are submitted. So they can issue any order, okay, pertaining to the implementation of the AMLA. So the council is the complainant, okay, when civil forfeiture proceedings are filed. And they use the office of the Solicitor General when they file their complaints and cases. So they have investigatory powers, and it is the council who applies before the Court of Appeals the ex parte freezing order. Okay, when ganahan nila ipa-freeze ang known accounts of a suspected offender. So they require the Land Registration Authority and the Registry of Deeds to submit reports on real estate transactions in excess of 500,000 and other administrative functions. So the AMLC is considered as the Philippines Financial Intelligence Unit. So in addition to implementing the AMLA, they are also the body which implements the Terrorism Financing Prevention and Suppression Act. So it is the council which initiates the proceedings for ex parte petition for issuance of freeze order, ex parte application for issuance of bank inquiry order, and the verified petition for civil forfeiture. So muna siya ang mga cases na ipang-file ni council, and it has its own rule. The proceedings for forfeiture. Okay, na siya yung own rule. Freeze order. Daghan kay questions on freeze order, guys, sa bar. So, mastiro ni ninyo. There are two kinds. There can be the court-issued freeze order, and there is also the AMLC-issued freeze order. Wani agi sa court, but it is limited only for terrorism financing. Katong LOHA sa Terrorism Financing Suppression Act. So the freeze order, it is a provisional remedy aimed at blocking or restraining monetary instruments or properties in any way related to unlawful activity from being transacted, withdrawn, deposited, transferred, removed, concealed, or otherwise moved or disposed without affecting the ownership thereof. So ang movement sa kwarta ipa-freeze. Why does the government need the freeze order, the freezing of the properties? So it buys the government, especially the prosecutory arm of the government, time to prepare its case and file the appropriate charges without having to worry about the dissipation, ang pag-disappear sa money and assets that are related to the suspected illegal activity. So don't forget, who issues the freeze order? Court of Appeals. But kung mo file ka o criminal case for money laundering, it is the RTC. So criminal case RTC, but freeze order, Court of Appeals. Right? So dili ka issue og freeze order si RTC, CA gini. So paspas kay siya nga petition. It must be decided within 24 hours by the Court of Appeals. And it is the OSG which initiates this petition. Does the AMLC have the authority to freeze deposits? 2015 bar. Pwede ha? You relate it to the Terrorism Financing and Suppression Act. Right? So time is critical when the AMLC initiates ex parte proceedings. So they have information that the money is about to be moved. So that's why the CA must act on those ex parte petition within 24 hours. So what will the Court of Appeals evaluate once there is this ex parte petition filed? So need sad o probable cause, guys, for the issuance of the freeze order. So you can read all about it in the Ligot versus Republic case. But probable cause for the issuance of a freeze order refers to such facts which would lead a prudent man to believe that an unlawful activity and or money laundering offense is about to be, is being, or has been committed, and that the account or monetary instrument or property subject to be frozen is related to that unlawful activity. So there must be sufficiency of the relation between the unlawful activity and the property or monetary instrument na ipa-freeze. So i-link siya dapat within that ex parte application for freeze order. Effectivity, it should not exceed 6 months ang kaning freezing of the account. But it can be extended, okay, for good cause shown. But i-prove na siya on motion ni AMLC. So, until that motion to extend is resolved by the Court of Appeals, then the freeze order will remain effective. So, what if na-trick question nga 8 months na, but na ay pending motion to extend, wa pag i-resolve? So, what's the effect of that pending motion? Na lift ba ang freeze order or wa? Lapas naman 6 months. Lapas na 6 months, di ba? Effective naman 6 months. But ni-file man si Kuan, naka-file man si AMLC o motion to extend, but pending pa. On the 8th month, since the freezing of the account, pending gyapon ang motion to extend. Is the freeze order already lifted or functus officio na ba ang freeze order? Still remains effective. Okay? And naa nag-bar question na guys. So, effective gyapon ang freeze order. As long as kaning motion to extend has been filed before the 6-month period. Right? So, general rule, effective siya for 6 months. But it may be extended upon motion of the council. And as long as that motion has been filed before the expiration of the original period, and as long as it has not yet been resolved by the Court of Appeals, the freeze order will remain effective. So, ayaw mo pa trip up sa 6 months na na-expire na, wala effect. So, as a rule, the CA can extend the freeze order for a period not exceeding 6 months as well. So, ingon lang si Supreme Court diri kay Ligot versus Republic na the CA is hereby directed to resolve this kind of motion for extension with reasonable dispatch. But what is reasonable depends on the Court of Appeals. So, the rule is that the freeze order is deemed lifted ipso facto when the 6-month period has already lapsed. Na-expire na siya. What's the effect when naanay freeze order issue and while it is still effective, the freeze order, makasuhan na o money laundering offense ang katong tag-iya sa frozen account. So, the freeze order is deemed ipso facto lifted after its expiration unless, okay, a complaint against the person na tag-iya sa frozen account or a petition for civil forfeiture has been filed, then that has the effect of making the freeze order effective. Okay? Until the money laundering offense is terminated. Or in those courts where the money laundering offense is filed or the civil forfeiture proceeding is filed, unless these courts will issue an asset preservation order. So here, you see another instance na ma-extend ang freeze order more than 6 months. So kung ma-filean di ay og kaso ang katong owner sa frozen account, kay ma-extend while pending ang case. Right? Claro? And those cases can either be a criminal case for money laundering or a civil case for forfeiture. And in those two cases, the criminal or civil, if the courts handling those will issue an asset preservation order, then it has the same effect as the freeze order. Di mahilabtan ang account. So one option of the account owner gi-freeze is before mo expire ang freeze order, before the 6 months, that person can secure that person shall secure a written confirmation to ascertain if there will be a filing of a civil forfeiture case or money laundering complaint. So the covered institutions, meaning the banks or anyone holding the money or property of the suspect or the offender, what do? Once they receive the freeze order? Of course, they implement it. They freeze the subject account, and that includes also related accounts. And they also inform the owner or holder of the account na nakadawat sila og freeze order. Then they need to submit a return to the Court of Appeals or the Council within 24 hours that they have already implemented the freeze order. So here's the coverage of the freeze order, guys. It's the principal account. And there are these related accounts and materially linked accounts. Until what time ta? 3? Okay. Related account. These are accounts which originated from and or are materially linked to the monetary instruments or property subject of the freeze order or an order of inquiry, regardless of the layer of accounts that the funds had passed through or transactions that they had undergone. So, ukayon di ay ang katong mga accounts na, for example, principal account na nagpada siya kwarta ani na mga other accounts. So, those can come within the related accounts and will be subject to a freeze order. What are materially linked accounts na ma-appeal? All accounts under the name of the person subject of the freeze order, okay, those owned or controlled by the same owner. All in trust for accounts where either the trustee or the trustor pertains to the person subject of the order. All accounts held for the benefit or in the interest of the person. All other accounts, shares, na nasa catch-all provision that are similar, analogous, or identical to any of the foregoing. So these are materially linked accounts. They are included in the freeze order. So what's the remedy? If imong client na froze iyang account? Motion to lift the freeze order. And this must be filed as soon as there is the freeze order and the court is required to resolve this motion before the 6-month period, before mo expire ang freeze order. So if that account that was frozen is being used to pay for lawful expenses, ma-prove niya nga lawful expenses ang bayad atong account, then that freeze order can be lifted, but the person must file a bond. Okay, submit a bond equivalent to the amount or value subject of the freeze order. So what's the remedy if you want to question the validity of the issuance of the freeze order? So ang ni-issue man si Court of Appeals, no other recourse but the Supreme Court. Okay, and what's the mode of review? Rule 45. Petition for review on certiorari under Rule 45. What's the effect of that appeal to the Supreme Court? It will not stay the enforcement of the order issued unless makakuha sila og TRO or injunction or status quo anti-order from the Supreme Court. So the freeze order are limited only to those accounts, okay, where the court finds that there is probable cause nga proceed siya of an unlawful activity. And there is this prohibition again that no asset shall be frozen that will prejudice the candidate of an electoral office during the election period. And no court can issue a TRO or a writ of injunction against any freeze order except the Supreme Court. So we have this asset preservation order. So si CA, freeze order na siya. But si RTC, na pwede siya yung nag-handle sa money laundering criminal case or sa civil forfeiture case, can issue the asset preservation order. There is a pending civil forfeiture case. Same siya og concept sa freeze order. What's the remedy? Kung ni-issue si RTC og APO, it's a motion to discharge the asset preservation order. So the ground will be if the account is also being used for lawful expenses, okay, payment of taxes, etc. Still requires the putting up of a bond. So bank inquiry order, there are also two kinds. The court-issued bank inquiry order and AMLC-issued inquiry order. So this bank inquiry order, BI, allows the council to examine or inquire into particular bank accounts or investments. Mahimo siyang exception to the bank secrecy law. Who issues the court-issued BI order? Court of Appeals again. And this can also be through ex parte application of the council. Kasabot mo sa significance sa ex parte, no? No notice and no hearing is required prior to issuance of the bank inquiry order or the freeze order. So no prior criminal charge, pending case, or conviction for the unlawful activity is required for the filing or resolution of the application for the bank inquiry order. So, dili siya pareha sa freeze order, anay probable cause. That the proceeds is related, that the money is a proceed from an unlawful offense. So, the CA is also required to act on this within 24 hours. Still, however, in accordance with Republic versus Volante, in order for the court to issue a bank inquiry order, it is necessary to show specific facts and circumstances that provides a link gihapon between the unlawful activity and the account. So the ex parte application will not violate due process, okay, because it is expressly provided for by law. No need for prior notice and hearing. So this is discussed in the case of Subido Pahente Law Offices. Bank inquiry, okay, pursuant to the AMLA, is not violative of the right to privacy. Okay, Republic versus Eugenio, and also in the Subido Law Offices case. So can the owner of the bank account na gi-inquire, so can the holder question the issuance of a bank inquiry order? So ma-issue pwede siya ma-question sa bank holder, but the opportunity to question the issuance will be after a freeze order has been issued against the account. Okay, bank inquiry raman. Okay, nothing yet is being charged against that. Wa pa siya, nilili lang ba? Yeah, di ba? Wala may violation of privacy, etc., due process. So, wadyo kayo mabuhat kung bank inquiry order. You can question the propriety of issuance of the bank inquiry order if the council, the AMLC, proceeds to apply for a freeze order over that same account. Then the council itself has the power to issue a bank inquiry order without going through the courts. But limited ra siya when the proceeds are suspected to be derived from these, okay, unlawful activities. Tanawa, gamay ra. So you need to memorize this. Kidnapping for ransom, violation of the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act, hijacking, destructive arson, murder. Similar or analogous. Muna siya tricky, no? Similar or analogous to A, B, and C. Then we have terrorism and conspiracy to commit terrorism and financing of terrorism. So, ex parte BI order issued by the AMLC. What's the coverage of the AMLC bank inquiry order? Deposit or investment accounts, also related accounts. But does it include related accounts na same og scope sa katong freeze order? Di ba ma-frozen man ang related accounts? But there's a clarification in the Subido Law Office case. A court order ex parte must first be obtained before the AMLC can inquire into related accounts. So therefore, the scope of the inquiry of the AMLC na wala ni agi sa court will be just the principal account. Kung ganahan siya na mo inquire into the related accounts, then court order ex parte must first be obtained. So, pwede apaspas ra gyapon siya if nagukod og time si AMLC kay ex parte man gihapon, but it must be the court already which will issue the bank inquiry order. So there's a requirement of complying with sections 2 and 3 of the 1987 Constitution. Unsa ni? 2 and 3. Article 3. Bill of Rights. Unsa na? 2019 bar. May the MALC examine the bank accounts of the accused public officials even without seeking prior court order. Question palandaan, mga tanadayon mo. Depende kung unsa ilahang crime. Sa may ilang crime diri. Okay, naay bidding irregularities ni dawat sila kickback sa usa ka multi-billion contract. So this is graft and corruption. So can the AMLC examine the account? Part ba siya sa katong-atong gi-memorize ganina? No. So, muna, need mo mag-memorize ato. Kay 2019 bar, gipangutanan siya. Memorize gyud no? Why lusot? Di man mo ka-answer ato. Kung wa mo ka-memorize sa may a court order be issued ex parte for the freezing of the bank accounts of the accused public officials upon application of the council? If so, in what instance may this be done and which court can issue such order? Freeze order, ex parte. Asa man sila mukuha? Si council. CA. Okay? But pwede ba siya mabuhat sa kaning situation? Suspected graft and corruption. Pwede na, but musubay na sila sa requirements. Ang question man diri, may a court order be issued ex parte for the freezing upon application? Yes. So, anong sure man mo nga kung predicate offense si graft and corruption? Masud siya sa katong 34 no, katong bribery, etc. So, pwede. Again, 2017 bar. Ganahan mo examine si counsel sa bank account. Suspected drug trafficker. So, si AMLC gihatagan og formal demand si Prosperous Bank to allow its agent to examine the banking transactions of Lorenzo. But the bank refused. Di ba? So, gi-hide lang siya sa question, but it sounds like AMLC is implementing a bank inquiry order. Can they? So, it's not being framed as an issue here, but valid ba nga si AMLC without court order examining a bank account? Pwede ba? So, gi-memorize ito ninyo katong ganina. The AMLC issued bank inquiry order katong unom kabuok. Memorize na ninyo. So, yes, part siya. Naa dire sa 9165 o AMLC issued bank inquiry order. Allowed siya. 9165. Kanang drugs. 2018. Di gyud mawa si AMLA, guys. Important kayo siya nga balaod sa bar exam. Graft and bribery. Okay, si Mayor, iyang mga kita sa graft and bribery, iyang gideposit og foreign currency deposit unit. Nya ganahan si AMLC to examine the account of the mayor. So ingon si bank, no, we need written permission from the depositor. So sakto ba si bank? Foreign currency. You need to know the exceptions when there can be inquiry into a foreign currency deposit unit. Okay, but sadly, dili part ani ang foreign currency. So, sakto si bank. Gamay ra kay exceptions sa secrecy sa foreign currency deposit accounts. Second question. Can the AMLC order a banking institution to reveal matters relating to bank accounts? So, your answer will be katong ganina. They have the power to issue bank inquiry orders, but limited only to the following predicate crimes when the proceeds are derived from the following predicate crimes. So, kato yung answer. 2013. Daghan kayo, guys. No. So, would you advise the bank to comply with the order? So, again, ganahan si AMLC to confirm the ownership of a bank account, to provide details of the deposits, to hold. So, duha ni siya ka question. Ang usa about inquiry or examination of the account, as well as to freeze. So, what do you know about the rules, ana? Can there be inquiry na si counsel lang, AMLC lang? Pwede, depending on the offense. Can there be a freeze order na si AMLC counsel lang? Walay Court of Appeals na ano? Na exemption. Usa, terrorism. Financing terrorism, di ba? So, tanawon dayon ninyo. Unsa man ang gisuspetsahan na gibuhat aning Congressman Abner? Graph na sad ni. Okay, pork barrel allocations, graft and corruption ni siya, malversation of public funds. So, if that's the case, okay, pwede ba siya nga AMLC issued bank inquiry order? No court order? Pwede? Graft? How about freeze order? They said. So, as counsel for BDP, would you advise the bank to comply with the order? No. Okay, dapat mukuha og court order si counsel. Okay, civil forfeiture. Let's finish this next meeting. Right, and we'll also begin our discussion on the next topic. So na may next topic na to. So when studying for the AMLA, you need to have mnemonics because you need to memorize, okay, several things. Our next topic will be wala ko nag-upload. Okay, I'll send you new reading assignments. Okay, so see you next meeting, guys.
Thank you, attorney.
Thank you, attorney. Mr. Maraat. Um,